G'day and welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Dispatches from the Outpost. I'm Brennan, founder of ATS Trading Solutions, and this is episode 4. Episodes 1, 2 and 3 laid out how markets actually work: complex adaptive systems, deep structure, feedback loops, processes that most traders never stop to examine. This episode takes the lens somewhere different. We're walking through a 10-part series called The Natural History of Markets. Not an engineering framework, not a mechanical model, a field guide, the kind a naturalist would write. Markets observe the way a naturalist observes an ecosystem, the landscape, the species, the energy flows, the collective motion, the arms race, the destruction and renewal, the scars, the resilience, the emergence of order where no one designed it, and finally, where opportunity concentrates. By the end, you won't just have a better model of markets, you'll have a better orientation toward them. So, let's go. ATS Trading Solutions has been producing content about systematic trading, trend following and outlier hunting since 2014. One idea at the centre of it all: long-term success in markets comes from understanding proven professional processes, not tips, not predictions. We publish articles, research series, reports and podcasts. Dispatches is where that work comes to life on screen. Every episode has a full blog post on the website, written summary, links to the original series, key takeaways. The link is in the description below. This dispatch walks through The Natural History of Markets, a 10-part series published on ATS Trading Solutions. 10 parts, 10 lenses, each one drawn from ecology and natural systems, each one applied to financial markets with rigour. The argument is cumulative. You can't skip to the end and expect it to land, so let's walk through all 10. Here is a question the series is built around. What if markets are not machines that malfunction, but living systems that behave exactly as living systems do? Not a metaphor, a framework. Machines are built for a purpose. They have parts that can be optimized. When they fail, you find the broken component and you replace it. Living systems, however, are different. They evolved without a designer. They adapt without instruction. They produce order from local interaction, and they carry memory in structure. They exhibit behavior that emerges without anyone intending it. Markets do all these things, and the frameworks we use to understand them should reflect that. The series answers this in 10 steps. Let's walk through them. Part 1. The River and the Coastline. Why Markets Resist Measurement. In 1967, Benoit Mandelbrot asked a deceptively simple question: how long is the coast of Britain? Now the answer depends entirely on the length of your measuring stick. Measure coarsely and you skip over bays and inlets. Measure finely and every boulder, every crack in every stone adds to the total. The length grows without limit. There is no true length. The complexity exists at every scale. And this is the coastline paradox. Markets behave identically. Ask what the volatility of the S&P 500 is, and the answer depends entirely on your measuring stick. Measure monthly and you get one number. Measure daily and the number changes. Measure hourly and it changes again. And these are not the same number at different resolutions. They are genuinely different measurements of a structure that refuses to simplify. Monthly volatility is not daily volatility divided by the square root of trading days. That formula assumes independence. Real markets, however, carry memory. They are rough. Their complexity persists at every horizon. And then there is a river. A river does not flow through a pre-existing channel. It carves the channel as it flows. The water shapes the terrain. The terrain shapes the water. Price works the same way. A trend is a channel being carved in real time. Support and resistance are sediment deposits left by accumulated buying and selling. And when a volatility flood arrives, the market rewrites the structure that will constrain all future flow. So stop asking what the volatility is and start asking what the volatility is at your horizon. Part 2. Species and Niches. The Ecology of Market Participants. A coral reef looks like it should be impossible. Thousands of species crowded into the same structure. Resources finite. The logic of scarcity suggests a few dominant species should drive the rest to extinction. Yet reefs persist in extraordinary diversity. The paradox resolves when you look more closely. Each species occupies a distinct niche. Competition is minimized because differentiation is maximized. Financial markets are the same in possibility. Market participants don't all compete for the same return. They partition the market into non-overlapping ways of making a living. A participant's niche is defined by at least 4 dimensions. Horizon. The day trader and the endowment fund may hold the same stock. They are harvesting different temporal structures. They are not competing. Strategy. The trend follower buys strength. The mean reversion trader does the opposite. They coexist because they profit in entirely different conditions. Constraint. Mandates, risk limits, redemption pressure. These constraints force divergence from unconstrained optimization and create the predictable patterns that others can harvest. And finally, information. Fundamentals, price action, alternative data, order flow. Same instrument, different questions, different answers that need not agree. So your task is not to find the best strategy, your task is to find your niche. When niches collapse, when differentiation fails and everyone crowds into the same trade, crisis follows. The monoculture trap, replicated in positioning. Part 3. The Food Web. How liquidity flows through markets. Every ecosystem is organised by something you cannot see. A forest appears to be organised by trees, but look closer and you'll find it is organised by energy. Sunlight to plants, plants to herbivores, herbivores to carnivores. At each step, energy transfers, transforms, and partially dissipates. Liquidity is the energy that organises markets. Markets exhibit the same layered structure as a food web. We have primary producers, the market makers and patient limit order investors. They create the substrate on which all other activity depends, compensated by the spread and the service of availability. Then we have primary consumers, momentum traders, hedgers, corporate treasury flows. They pay the cost of immediacy and transfer energy upward. Then we have secondary consumers, arbitrageurs and statistical traders. They recycle inefficiency, tightening spreads and enforcing consistency across the market. Then we have the apex consumers, sovereign wealth funds, forced sellers, index reconstitutions. Their activity doesn't simply consume existing liquidity, it reshapes the entire structure. When a sovereign fund sells, market makers must absorb inventory they did not seek. The whole ecosystem therefore adjusts. And just as ecosystems face carrying capacity, strategies face it too. A system that works at $10 million may fail entirely at $1 billion. The strategy hasn't changed. Its own consumption has overwhelmed the available supply. So liquidity is not a given. It is a product of other participants' choices. When those choices change, so does everything built on them. Part 4. The murmuration. How collective motion emerges without a leader. At dusk in Rome, hundreds of thousands of starlings gather and form a single mass that twists, pulses, and reshapes itself against the sky. The motion is fluid, coordinated, and impossibly fast. There is no leader. No signal passes through the flock. No bird knows the shape of the whole. Each bird follows 3 local rules. Stay close to your neighbours. Match their direction. Avoid collision. 3 local rules. Global coherence. Appears designed, was never planned. Markets move the same way, not through coordination, through shared constraints. Volatility targeting. When volatility spikes, funds calibrated to maintain a constant level of risk reduce exposure simultaneously. Each fund acts on its own mandate. None has called the others, but because the mandates are similar, the actions are similar. Clustered stop levels. Stops concentrate at round numbers and technical thresholds. Price reaches them, they trigger together. Selling accelerates, more stops trigger. Margin calls. When many participants are leveraged and prices fall together, margin calls arrive together. Forced selling becomes synchronized, not through agreement, but through shared exposure to the same trigger. And this all reframes causation. So stop looking for what triggered the move. Start asking what made the system ready to move. The trigger is not the cause. The structure that made the system ready to move is the cause. Part 5. Predator and Prey. The evolutionary arms race in markets. There are 2 ways to hunt. The cheetah predicts. It chases specific prey with speed and precision. Every feature of its body has been sculpted for one purpose, yet it fails more often than it succeeds. The gazelle escapes. This is not a design flaw, it is the signature of an arms race. The cheetah is fast because slow cheetahs starved. The gazelle is fast because slow gazelles were eaten. Each species has been sharpened by the other. The race never stops. Predictive strategies in markets face the same race. Every strategy that attempts to forecast future prices is a cheetah. It works until others notice. Capital flows in, the pattern degrades, the prey has learned to run faster. The spider, however, does not predict. The spider builds a web and waits. It does not chase, anticipate, or extrapolate trajectories. It constructs a structure that catches whatever arrives. Trend following is a web. Mean reversion is a web. These structural response strategies persist because they harvest regularities the trading process itself creates. As long as traders exist, the regularities persist. And here is a key insight. The arms race between predictive strategies does not erode structural response edges, it feeds them. The more intensely cheetahs compete, the more dislocations and trends they create. The spider eats what the chase disturbs. So alpha is temporary, adaptation is durable. Keep running or build a web. Part 6 and 7 look at forces that reshape the ecosystem over time. Part 6. The Forest Fire. For most of the 20th century, the US Forest Service suppressed all fires. The policy worked in a narrow sense. Fires were extinguished, forests remained standing. But the small fires that had once swept through regularly, clearing deadwood, no longer occurred. Fuel therefore accumulated year after year. When fire finally came, it was not small, it was catastrophic. The policy of suppression had not eliminated fire, it had transformed fire from a regular cleansing process into an irregular, devastating one. Markets work identically. Prolonged stability encourages leverage, crowding, and complacency. Volatility suppression does not eliminate risk, it transforms frequent small corrections into infrequent large crises. The spark did not create the fire, the fuel did. Part 7. Scars and Seasons. Walk through a forest that burned decades ago and you'll see the fire everywhere, in the species composition, in the soil chemistry, in the growth patterns. The fire is gone, but its effects remain. Markets carry memory in exactly the same way. We carry 2008 in capital requirements and risk models. We carry 1987 in the options skew. Every significant event reshapes the terrain that the next generation of participants inhabits, often without knowing why the rules exist. And as memory fades, as participants who lived through the original trauma retire, the fuel accumulates again, the forest forgets, the conditions for the next fire develop. Read the terrain. The scars tell you what the market has survived and what it is still protecting against. Parts 8 and 9 address what makes systems survive and why markets look the way they do. Part 8. The diversity dividend. In the 1840s, Ireland grew almost entirely potatoes, one variety, optimised for yield, planted everywhere. When blight arrived, the efficiency that had fed the population became the fragility that starved it. 1 million people died, another 1 million emigrated. The famine was not caused by potatoes, it was caused by the absence of variety. The same monoculture trap operates in markets. Success attracts imitation. Strategies crowd. True diversity means different responses to the same shock, not different labels on correlated exposures. The portfolio that survives is the one that remains functional when conditions change. Part 9. Evolution without a designer. No committee planned the modern market from first principles. Exchanges, clearinghouses, prime brokers, ratings agencies, all evolved through variation, selection and retention. What worked survived, what failed was replaced. Strategies are species under continuous selection pressure. Markets have no destination, no equilibrium toward which they converge. There is only continuous evolution in response to changing conditions. So what looks like intelligent design is the residue of unintelligent selection. You are part of this evolution. Evolve or exit. Part 10. The estuary, where boundaries concentrate opportunity. We began this series at the river. We watched how water carves channels as it flows. Now we arrive at the estuary, where the river meets the sea. An estuary is neither fresh water nor salt water. Both meet, mix, and create one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth. The boundary is not a line, but a zone, constantly negotiated, never fixed. Ecologists call these zones ecotones. They are where different systems overlap and where novel conditions develop that exist nowhere else. Edges are where the life concentrates. Markets have edges too. The boundary between asset classes. Where equities meet fixed income, hybrid instruments emerge. Specialists exploit the gap between investors thinking in entirely different terms. The boundary is fertile precisely because participants on either side are using different maps. The boundary between public and private markets. The transition zone creates mispricings that specialists in both environments can exploit. Information, liquidity, and valuation frameworks all differ. The mixing zone is productive. The boundary between regimes. Old rules dissolve. New rules have not yet formed. Participants embedded in the old regime are slow to recognise the change. Those who sense the transition early can position for the emerging regime before it is obvious. The naturalist does not control the ecosystem. They inhabit it. They observe its rhythms, respect its forces, and position themselves where life is most abundant. So find the edge, because that is where the life is. 10 parts, 10 lenses. Let me bring them together. Markets resist fixed measurement. The complexity exists at every scale. Match your ruler to your horizon. Participants coexist through differentiation. The reef sustains diversity because its inhabitants found ways to differ. Your task is to find your niche and defend it. Liquidity is the energy that organises everything. Every strategy has a carrying capacity. Understand yours before the market teaches you. Collective motion emerges without coordination. You cannot predict where the flock will turn, but you can learn to feel the pressure building around you before the turn arrives in the price. The trigger is not the cause. The structure that made the system ready to move is the cause. Read the fuel accumulation, not the spark. Predictive alpha decays. Structural response edges persist. The arms race feeds them. Know which side of the hunt you are on. Prolonged calm accumulates fuel. Suppressed volatility stores risk. It doesn't eliminate it. Small fires are the price of avoiding large ones. Markets carry trauma in their structure for decades. Read the terrain for scars. They tell you what the system survived and what it is still protecting against. Diversity is insurance. Carry apparent inefficiency. It is a premium on survival when conditions change. And finally, opportunity concentrates at boundaries, the mixing zones, the transitions, the edges where different systems meet, and specialists of neither pure environment have built the web. So, the naturalist does not control the ecosystem, they inhabit it. Every article in this series is published in full on ATS Trading Solutions. 10 pieces, 1 sustained argument. The river and the coastline. Species and niches. The food web. The murmuration. Predator and prey. The forest fire. Scars and seasons. The diversity dividend. Evolution without a designer. And the estuary. Read all 10. The argument builds across them. Each one opens a window. Together they form the view. The link is in the description below. The series we've just walked through isn't a collection of interesting ideas about markets. It's more of a framework for seeing markets as they actually are. Living, adaptive, evolving without a designer, organised by energy flows most traders never consider, shaped by forces most traders never observe, producing collective behaviour no individual intends. You don't need to predict what happens next. You need to understand the ecosystem in which whatever happens will unfold. The naturalist does not control the ecosystem. They learn it. They read it. They position themselves where life is most abundant, and they build a practice that can survive the seasons. This is the work. Find the niche. Read the scars. Carry the diversity. Stay at the edges and size for survival. Not a checklist, an orientation. The market will keep doing what it does. Living systems always do. The question is whether you are positioned to be there when it does. So read the full series. The link is in the description. Dispatches from the Outpost is a video series from ATS Trading Solutions where I walk through our published research, deep dives on specific topics, and challenge the conventional wisdom that holds most traders back. Some episodes walk through a published research series. Some go deep on a single idea that deserves more rigour than it usually gets. And some take on a piece of conventional wisdom in markets and challenge it directly. Each new dispatch takes one important idea and works it through properly. Every episode comes with a full written summary, key takeaways and links to the original research. Watch the video, read the series, and then go as deep as you want. Subscribe on YouTube. Browse all dispatches. ATSTradingSolutions.com. So, until next time, stay in the process.